The world is holding its breath tonight. What began as scattered whispers of dissent in the back alleys of Tehran has, in the last 72 hours, exploded into a nationwide inferno. This is not another protest. This is a coordinated, sophisticated, and brutally effective challenge to the very foundation of the Islamic Republic. Official state media in Iran calls it foreign-backed sedition. The White House issues carefully worded denials. But here at Global Crisis Radar, we are connecting the dots. And the picture emerging is one of the most audacious intelligence operations of the 21st century. We are witnessing the activation of a sleeper network decades in the making. Today, we dissect the evidence pointing to a CIA-led campaign to trigger a civil war from within. And we ask the question on every world leader's mind: is the Islamic Republic on the verge of total collapse? It didn't begin with chance. It began with silence. 48 hours before the first major protest, a series of catastrophic, near-simultaneous infrastructure failures crippled key nodes of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. In Isfahan, a major IRGC drone manufacturing facility suffered a crippling cyber attack, wiping years of research and development data. In Bandar Abbas, the port's primary command and control network for IRGC fast attack boats went dark. These were not random accidents. They were surgical strikes on the regime's nervous system, executed with a level of precision that screamed external involvement. The attacks were traceless, digital ghosts that vanished as quickly as they appeared. This was Phase 1. The objective: to blind and confuse the regime's hardline enforcers just before the storm hit. Intelligence sources are referring to the architects of this chaos as ghost assets, a new classification of operative. These are not simply informants or paid agitators. The Ghost Protocol, allegedly developed over the last decade by the CIA's Special Activities Center, involves cultivating and training Iranian dissidents, ex-military, and tech experts outside of Iran, then reinserting them into the country over a period of years. They live as ordinary citizens, completely dormant, until activated by a complex series of encrypted signals. Their mission is not just to protest, but to lead, organize, and escalate. When the protests finally erupted on the streets of South Tehran, they were different. The anger was familiar, born of economic hardship and brutal repression. But the organization was new. Protesters weren't just a directionless mob. They moved in coordinated cells, using encrypted messaging apps that were previously unknown. They targeted besieged militia headquarters with chilling accuracy, set up effective barricades, and established field medic stations. They had leadership. They had a plan. The Iranian government was caught flat-footed. Their initial response was brutal but disjointed. The cyber attacks had sown just enough confusion. State television broadcasted forced confessions from alleged rioters, claiming they were paid by American and Israeli intelligence. But the narrative wasn't holding. The sheer scale of the uprising, spreading like wildfire to a dozen cities within a day, was overwhelming the state's propaganda machine. The ghost had provided the spark, and decades of popular anger had become the fuel. The regime is now facing an enemy that knows how it thinks, how it operates, and where its pressure points are. And as we received reports just moments ago, the first cracks within the military establishment are beginning to show. A commander in Shiraz has reportedly refused orders to deploy his troops against the people. The fuse has been lit. The initial shockwave that rocked Tehran has now become a sustained, seismic event, shaking the entire nation. The uprising has entered a new, far more dangerous phase. What was once a protest is now beginning to resemble an armed insurrection. The regime's playbook, brute force, mass arrests, and internet blackouts, is failing. This is a direct consequence of the Ghost Network's strategy. They did not just start the fire. They are actively fanning the flames and directing its path. In the city of Tabriz, a critical logistics hub for the IRGC in the northwest, protesters, guided by what sources claim were ex-Artesh officers linked to the Ghost Network, successfully raided a Basij armory. The footage is stunning. We are no longer seeing rocks and Molotov cocktails. We are seeing organized cells armed with assault rifles and tactical gear, establishing fortified checkpoints. This marks a fundamental shift in the conflict's dynamic. The state's monopoly on violence has been challenged. This escalation is a textbook move from a destabilization campaign. Step 1. Cripple command and control. Step 2. Initiate popular unrest. Step 3. Arm the insurgency. We are now witnessing Step 3 in real time. The CIA's alleged operation, which some intelligence insiders are calling Project Chimera, appears to be built on a deep understanding of the fractures within Iranian society and its military. It exploits the long-standing rivalry between the ideological IRGC and the more traditional national army, the Artesh. The ghost assets are not only arming civilians, they are executing a sophisticated psychological warfare campaign. Leaked documents, likely forgeries but incredibly convincing, are spreading through military channels. These documents detail alleged plans by IRGC hardliners to purge the Artesh leadership. Other leaks suggest key government officials are moving their families and fortunes out of the country. The goal is to induce paranoia, to turn brother against brother, and to paralyze the state's security apparatus with distrust. It is working. In Isfahan, the situation has become even more critical. A significant portion of the city's regular police force has reportedly abandoned their posts, melting back into the civilian population. Some have even joined the protesters. This is a catastrophic failure for the Interior Ministry. The IRGC has been deployed to restore order, but their presence is only inflaming the situation. They are seen not as protectors of the nation, but as an occupying army in their own country. The economic dimension of this crisis cannot be overstated. With chaos in the streets, the Iranian rial has entered a death spiral, losing over 50% of its value against the dollar in just 3 days. Hyperinflation is beginning to take hold. This financial collapse is another deliberate pillar of the destabilization strategy. As the currency becomes worthless, it pushes even regime loyalists and the politically apathetic into the arms of the opposition. It transforms a political uprising into a fight for survival. The supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, has remained silent for over 24 hours. This silence is deafening. It signals confusion and division at the highest echelons of power. The hardliners are demanding a bloodbath, a Tiananmen Square solution, to crush the rebellion. The pragmatists fear such a move would be the final nail in the coffin of the Islamic Republic, igniting a full-scale civil war they cannot win. As they hesitate, the Ghost Network consolidates its gains. Reports are now emerging of a high-profile defection, not just a commander, but a brigadier general from an IRGC intelligence unit, who has allegedly appeared on an encrypted broadcast calling for his brothers-in-arms to lay down their weapons and join the people. If confirmed, this is a game-changer. The defection of an IRGC general has sent a shockwave through the Iranian establishment, transforming internal paranoia into an open power struggle. The regime is no longer just fighting a war on the streets. It is now fighting a war within its own corridors of power. This is the stage where revolutions are won or lost. Not with bullets, but with loyalty shifts, backroom deals, and betrayals. The ghost assets have successfully turned the state's security apparatus into a circular firing squad. Our sources inside Tehran describe a city holding its breath. The IRGC's elite Quds Force units, normally deployed across the Middle East, are being recalled to the capital. But their objective is unclear. Are they there to crush the protests, or to secure the regime against a potential coup from within the Artesh? This ambiguity is creating a powder keg situation. Military units are now viewing each other with suspicion. A tense standoff was reported just hours ago near the Mehrabad airport between an IRGC patrol and a unit of the Artesh's 23rd Commando Division. No shots were fired, but the message was clear. The military is fractured. This is psychological warfare at its most masterful. The Ghost Network is no longer just leaking documents. It's feeding tailored disinformation to specific factions. IRGC commanders are receiving intelligence that Artesh units are planning to seize the state broadcasting headquarters. Simultaneously, Artesh leaders are being fed reports that the IRGC is preparing to arrest them and their families. It's a hall of mirrors, designed to provoke a preemptive strike from one side against the other. The international reaction is adding fuel to the fire. Russia and China, Iran's traditional allies, have called for stability, but have offered no concrete support, likely waiting to see which faction emerges victorious. Their silence is a devastating blow to the regime's morale. In contrast, the United States has moved the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group closer to the Persian Gulf. Officially, it's a precautionary measure. Strategically, it's a clear signal to the Iranian military. If you break from the regime, the world will have your back. Inside Iran, the ether is alive with forbidden information. Despite the internet blackout, the Ghost Network has deployed sophisticated satellite internet relays in key urban centers. Starlink terminals, allegedly smuggled into the country over the last year, are providing unfiltered access to the outside world for protest leaders. This completely neuters one of the regime's most effective tools of control. They can no longer isolate their population in a bubble of propaganda. The people are seeing the world, and the world is seeing them. The supreme leader finally broke his silence, but his televised address was a strategic disaster. Appearing frail and visibly angered, he blamed the great Satan and Zionist entity in a tirade that felt disconnected from the reality on the ground. He promised an iron fist, but his voice lacked conviction. The speech was intended to project strength, but instead, it projected desperation. It was the speech of a leader who has lost control of the narrative and, perhaps, his country. This brings us to the most critical flashpoint. We are now getting unconfirmed but credible reports from a source in Mashhad. An IRGC unit, ordered to fire on protesters who were attempting to storm a government building, was itself fired upon. The shots did not come from the protesters. They came from a nearby Artesh barracks. This is the moment we have been warning about. The first shots have been fired between factions of the Iranian armed forces. This is no longer a risk of civil war. By definition, this is civil war. The Rubicon has been crossed. The firefight between the IRGC and the Artesh in Mashhad was not an isolated incident. Similar reports are now flooding in from Shiraz and Ahvaz. The chain of command has shattered. Iran has descended into a state of open, armed conflict between its own military factions, with the civilian population caught in the middle. The Ghost Network's final objective has been achieved: the complete and total fracturing of the state. What we are witnessing is a multi-front war. In the cities, it's a brutal urban conflict between protesters, newly armed, and now organized into local defense militias, fighting against hardline Basij and IRGC units who remain loyal to the supreme leader. It's block-by-block warfare. In the provinces, the conflict is taking on a different character. Ethnic minorities, Kurds in the west, Baluchis in the southeast, are seizing this moment of chaos to assert their own autonomy, attacking IRGC border posts and seizing territory. The international ramifications are staggering. The price of oil has skyrocketed by 30% in a matter of hours, threatening to plunge the global economy into a severe recession. The Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of the world's oil passes, is now a war zone. The White House is in emergency session, officially denying any role in the uprising, but facing immense pressure to intervene, to secure nuclear sites, and prevent a regional spillover. The question of Iran's nuclear program is now a terrifying wildcard. Who controls the facilities at Natanz and Fordow? Are they secure, or could they fall into the hands of a rogue IRGC commander, or worse, be damaged in the crossfire? A radiological crisis in the heart of the Middle East is now a terrifyingly real possibility. The carefully constructed ambiguity of Iran's nuclear status has been replaced by the sheer terror of uncertainty. The ghost assets have now melted back into the shadows. Their mission is complete. They were the catalyst, the unseen hand that pushed the first domino. They expertly identified every crack in the foundation of the Islamic Republic: the economic despair, the political repression, the ethnic tensions, the military rivalries, and poured gasoline into every single one. They didn't create the firestorm. They merely guided it. So what comes next? Iran stands at a precipice. The path forward is shrouded in smoke and uncertainty. Will the nation collapse into a failed state like Syria or Libya, carved up by warlords and extremist groups? Or can a new, cohesive leadership emerge from the chaos to build a democratic, secular state? The answer will shape the geopolitical landscape for the next 50 years. The collapse of the Soviet Union was the defining event of the late 20th century. The collapse of the Islamic Republic of Iran may well be the defining event of the early 21st. The world is watching, and the story is evolving by the minute. The crisis in Iran is the single most important geopolitical event happening right now, and we will be here to track every development. Make sure you are subscribed to Global Crisis Radar with notifications on. We are your frontline source for analysis as this historic event unfolds. Stay informed. Stay safe.